Hello and welcome to the Fit to Transform podcast, where you learn how to train and diet effectively and, most importantly, how to maintain those results for life, once and for all. I'm Nikias Tomasiello, a transgender training and nutrition coach working online with anyone who's ready for a true lifestyle transformation, anywhere they may be in the world. As a friendly reminder, any and all information provided is for educational purposes only. You should consult with your doctor before implementing any changes to your diet and exercise program. With that disclaimer out of the way, thank you for being here. Now grab yourself a cup of tea or pre-workouts and enjoy. Yo, dear listeners, hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to be talking about bodybuilding contest preparation or contest prep for friends, and I'm going to be doing that with Coach Steve Hall. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's funny. We've obviously been talking off air, and I was giving you an update on my dog, who unfortunately is not well at the moment. And I keep having this when people ask me how I am. My thoughts immediately go to her, and I just don't even care how I am. But I'm good, actually. When I think about it, I'm actually feeling well in myself, and training's going well. So, I mean, that's my anchor in day-to-day life. So I feel good. Sleep's been pretty good at the moment. And yeah, I'm enjoying off-season, improvement season, I like to call it, not comp prep, which is a different animal and beast. So I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah, as we were saying, I am really sorry about Ada, and I am happy to hear that the improvement season is going well. How many months since the last contest prep you did are you at now?
Yeah, so I pretty much, my first show was the end of September. So I'm not quite a year of the season done. The last show was around the end of November, but in and around this time, I'm in and around a year post show at the moment. Not quite a year, but yeah, I can't believe it's even been that long. So it's wild to me thinking about like what the end of the last year was, and it's already this time the year following. So yeah, deep into it though, that's for sure.
And if I'm not wrong, it's in your last season that you became a pro. So your next season will be your debut as a professional bodybuilder, correct?
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one because I turned pro in my first show of the season. And so actually, I wouldn't call that my pro debut because I did have, obviously I've had my pro debut now because I turned pro in Netherlands. I did a show in Switzerland, and then I went to Worlds, WMBF Worlds, and did the pro class there. But that's like a lot of people don't term that like their pro debuts, or I guess it's my pro debut season, I would call it. This is my first pro off season, so yeah, next year will be my first pro like season as a pro for the whole time, which I like phrasing it like that too because I didn't place as highly as I would like in the pro ranks, and I think a great way of framing it is it's like playing on hard mode. And initially, when you kind of, I don't know, you just about make levels through on hard mode, and it's like, oh, like I'd like to actually like ace those. So that's where I'm going through now. It's another level in the journey, as it were.
Well, good luck coming back with a vengeance and also just enjoying the improvement season for now. So I know you enjoy every part of the process, but I think it's always important to bring it up for some people in the audience who maybe focus a bit too much on the outcome and potentially the next contest season or the next physique result that they want to get or whatever that may be. And I think it was useful to use this update of yours to set the stage, pun very much intended, for the conversation that we're going to have. And dear listeners, you already know that I like role playing because I did that with Clara when she was last on, and I'm going to try and do that again with Steve today, where I'm going to pretend to be somebody who wants to get into bodybuilding. But Steve, I've already told you, imagine that I don't know very much about bodybuilding at all I did was I was browsing Instagram and I saw some pictures of guys that looked amazing on stage. And I thought, well, I've been training for a while. I want to do that. So I'm going to hire a coach to help me do that. And in this podcast, Steve and I will go through a rather extended first consultation where I'm going to be asking questions to Steve about what goes into contest prep. Steve, as a coach, as my potential coach, will ask me questions that he would ask to any aspiring competitor, I would imagine. So that by the end of it, the goal is for you, dear listeners, to have an understanding of what to look for in a good coach, because not all coaches that help people get to stage have Steve's ability. And also, you get an understanding of what goes into the contest preparation itself in terms of mindset, mental and physical health, the process, what happens on show day, what happens afterwards, just a variety of generalities to think about so that you can decide for yourself whether you want to go into this or not. Steve, are you ready?
Yeah, let's dive in. I
So
think
for
I'm
the
ready.
Hopefully so. For the duration of our role play, you have to call me Naruto because that's gonna be my
No.
nickname.
We got him. He's down. He's ready.
Yeah, I love that
You're a
tattoo.
shadow clone, or this one is.
I think that one is. I'm the original. All right, so let's get into the role play then. Steve, this is our consultation. I'm really excited to meet you for the first time. You already saw my application. You know what I want to do. I want to compete in bodybuilding. What do you think?
Amazing. The first thought that comes to mind, well, some of the questions I would already have asked, and I'm already doing this wrong because I'm treating you like Nikias and not Naruto in role play. But I would be asking, how many years have you been seriously lifting to kind of get a gauge? And I haven't got that awareness. So, Naruto, how many years have you been seriously dedicating towards bodybuilding already? I'd be interested to hear a little bit about your training nutritional history.
So I got into bodybuilding in 2018, and I would say that I started. It's hard to describe what serious lifting is, right? But I got into it by discovering Dr. Eric Helms. So I got his books, the Strength and Nutrition Pyramids, right away, and I based my first full body program off of that. So I would say I trained in an evidence informed way pretty much from the beginning. Of course, I wasn't as good at programming as I am now because I'm a coach full time. Um, and at first, I went through a cut for the first 4 months. So that basically took up June to October. And then I wanted to bulk, but I was afraid of gaining weight. So basically, I didn't for until May the next year, 2019. And then I had essentially a prolonged bulking phase from June 2019 until October 2020. October 2020 to 2021, I prepped for a photo shoot, and then I did another bulking phase, May 2021 to June to February 2022, and then I prepped for a second photo shoot where I got as lean as I've ever been in my life in August 2022. I had some gut health issues stemming off of that I had to take care of for the next year. And then 2024, I dedicated to preparing for top surgery. So basically, having my chest reshaped to have a more masculine appearance. So I did two mini cuts through that, but mainly I was either at maintenance calories or in a bit of a surplus. And then since October up until 2024, up until this summer, I was again in a surplus. Then I did a 9 week fat loss diet, and now I'm back to maintenance calories, aiming to go into a small surplus.
Awesome. That's some really good background. And yeah, you asked taking this seriously, which is a great question. But just knowing that you have all that awareness of what you've already been doing tells me you've been doing it seriously because you kind of mapped out and have been through phases. Bodybuilding off season wise, like that's great. And what I look for in people who want to step on stage is close to that 5 year mark of taking things seriously because I know if they have been doing that with the majority of time in a surplus, you've grown a heap of muscle for you. Everyone's different, of course, and the amount of muscle that you're going to carry is going to be different. But if you've spent a good close to 5 years in the majority of the time in a surplus in a well kind of thought out manner, obviously it's not always going to be optimal. We're always looking to improve, and it sounds like you're on that road too. That's great. So I would expect you have a solid amount of muscle for your frame to be able to take to the stage. And out of interest, because you mentioned the gut health issues in relation to photo shoot preps, which, by the way, it's awesome to know you've done some photo shoots, you've got nice and lean before, because that gives you some experience that you'll also experience during contest preparation. Uh, the gut health issues, are they resolved long term? Are they likely to rear their ugly head again during another diet phase? You mentioned that you did a recent 9 week. Did that all go fine?
So I believe that they are resolved at the moment, yes.
Amazing. That's good to know. And are there any other kind of eating related issues you've dealt with in the past? Obviously, you're going through these kind of cycles. It sounds like you're dealing with them fine, but are there any particular struggles? Did you ever have any disordered eating patterns that have, again, reared their ugly head, like the gut issues there?
Yes, actually. When I was 14 years old, I was overweight and I tried to lose fat. At the time, I didn't know anything. My understanding was if I eat less and move more, then I'll lose weight. And I took that to an extreme where I started over exercising and I cut out most of the foods, most foods out of my diet that I deemed unhealthy. And I had my own rules and criteria for what constituted a healthy food, which meant I basically ended up eating 10 foods tops in very small quantities. So it was never diagnosed or treated, but it was anorexia nervosa. And also, although it doesn't really exist in the DSM-5 at the moment, I would say I had orthorexia nervosa because of this strong sense of having to eat healthy food specifically. And then I had those behaviors for almost a decade. I was weight restored, meaning I wasn't underweight anymore by the time I was 18, which was when I was, which was around 2015. But then I still had disordered eating behaviors until probably 2018, 2019. It's hard to say when you're also in the bodybuilding sphere how disordered your habits are relative to other people because bodybuilding is a little bit different than just wanting to live your life. And also anorexia, I am aware that anorexia can actually change your the neural pathways in your brain. So to an extent I might never be the same as I was before contracting it, but every year it gets a lot better, and I think now I'm in a much more solid place than I ever was.
That's awesome to hear about, and I'm so glad you're in a better place. And thank you for being honest about your background there. And yeah, orthorexia is something I've definitely, and I think a lot of people have experienced. When I think that was partly, at least for me, it was poor information available and thinking there was like good and bad foods and clean and dirty. And you mentioned Eric Helms' muscle and strength pyramids, and he's in the nutritional pyramids there. It gives you that kind of sense of awareness of like how important it is to have an inclusive diet, and how there isn't good and bad foods. It's just chosen quantities of those foods. And I presume now that's more of the approach you take, more of a flexible dieting kind of macro tracking informed approach. And I use the analogy often of a dimmer switch. So very rarely fully on, like meal plan, timing, only these foods, but rarely off, where it's just like eating anything and no awareness. It's more of you kind of move between these depending on the circumstance.
Yeah, basically right now I'm tracking my calories and macros.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. Okay. And I imagine when you last did your photo shoot prep, you weren't concerned about the eating behaviors you were developing and anything like that. You're like, hey, I'm doing this for a goal, and when I come out of this, I can be like, I can increase the amount I eat, and I can be inclusive of foods, eat out, be in social environments, and yeah, not feel like I'm going back where I once was.
Well, that was the idea. I would also say I was self-coached and I underestimated what it would be like to get that lean, like to what kind of thoughts that would bring up. And when I became that lean, I really struggled to, well, for one, I underestimated how lean I was. I wasn't, I thought, well, I'm not prepping for stage, so I'm not going to have the same side effects. But then I definitely got, I think, below my lower intervention point because I was really struggling with hunger. I was very critical of my body. I also was clinging to that level of leanness because I was telling myself, well, you're not stage ready, So if you want to be this lean, you can, but I really couldn't. And I think that that's what contributed to the gut health issues because it was chronic constipation. And ultimately, although I had a coach who helped me overcome those gut health issues, I think out of all the protocols that we used, ultimately gaining weight was what helped me because once I gained enough weight, then I started feeling like my digestion was normalized. So I think I underestimated how attached I would become to being that lean, which is why I'm coming to you for coaching because I'm afraid that that's going to happen again. I want to compete, but I don't want to find myself in a place at the end of contest prep where I'm forcing myself to stay too lean and to have those consequences on my health again, both mental and physical.
For sure. Yeah. And yeah, again, thank you for sharing that with me. I think the good news is you've experienced some of the severe, extreme, kind of unwanted, but unfortunately very likely. And if you're getting sufficiently conditioned enough for stage, you're going to experience some of these extreme diet fatigue symptoms. Like your testosterone is going to plummet, you're going to have no libido. That unfortunately tends to happen for people. You start thinking about food much more than anything else. You Well, obviously your mood is disrupted. You become a bit apathetic. You again focus on your physique a lot, and that can lead to thoughts and feelings that you don't really want. And it sounds like you're actually looking for coaching to help you with all of that, to manage it and make sure it's like to an appropriate level and degree. Part of that is obviously going to be kind of setting a groundwork of, okay, you're this weight now. We think your stage weight's going to be here. What's an appropriate timeline to get there so you don't do anything too extreme? When might we want to have some breaks and buffer times in there too, like a diet break or anything like that? If you've used those refeeds, those sort of things, which can help. They can also help mitigate some of the unwanted eating behaviors too, where you can maintain a bit of social life, at least at the start. And then as we get closer to stage, everything gets a bit more restrictive, a bit more extreme, a bit less something you don't want to maintain. I like the analogy of, oh, go for a question.
Yeah, I have a question because so the way you're talking about it sounds like contest prep starts relatively easy, so I wouldn't need to be like super ultra focused on the plan. Like it's not going to be, I don't know, the entire time, blinkers on, super hard, no breaks, no social events. It's more like the closer we get to stage, the more that starts to happen. And also, it sounds like the consequences of getting lean aren't like day one of the diet, I'm already starving. Just like I experienced during the photo shoot, it kind of accumulates over time as the diet fatigue comes on. But in terms of timeline, normally when I help my clients diet, we'll run maybe 12 to 20 week diet phases before we take a somewhat prolonged break where we stay at calorie maintenance or in a surplus. What does the timeline for contest prep look like in comparison to a, let's call it a standard fat loss diet just for lifestyle?
Yeah, and very well described. It is absolutely not like a on and off switch. It's very much like a gradual build up of these diet fatigue symptoms, and again, you'd gradually expect them to go post show, which is what I was going to come to in terms of. It sounds like you're aware of after the comp prep is over, you also want guidance and help with that kind of, I would call it a recovery period. We are quite literally recovering from kind of depending on how long you've been dieting, but it could be up to 6 months, 4 months. And then it's going to take at least half that time to kind of recover some of those things, get you back to a healthy spot like you're in now, and into a productive improvement season, as I like to frame it. In terms of timelines, so I can't necessarily say a number of weeks. Very typical for natural bodybuilding, which is a bit different to the assisted side, which can have everything's just faster on that end. On the natural side, they tend to be more towards 20 to 30 weeks. 30 on the like more high end. I think that's more suited to experienced competitors who are used to being lean for a long time and things like this. And we don't want to set people up for failure and expect you're like a pro for your first contest prep. Want to make sure it's realistic, which would be closer to the 20 weeks. I would use baseline photos to get an awareness of kind of your level of body fat. Using that, I would then get an estimated stage weight, and then I would basically blueprint, create a bit of a long term plan, and map it out week to week, how many weeks would we need to lose this amount of weight? And even further, it might be that we wanted to take like a bit of a pre-prep diet phase, which wouldn't be blinkers on or prep focus at all, just like a normal diet phase, 5-10 weeks, get you pretty close to what would be like a lower intervention point, like you mentioned before, where you still feel good, productive, hold that for a period of time, work on maybe some weaknesses that we've identified through that initial diet, and then go into the contest prep itself. And that helps that not be such a long period of time. A good rough estimate is, say we decide, hey, you're 15 to 20 pounds above stage weight. I'd say we at least want then 20 weeks. So at least a pound per week. And that just allows us plenty of time to take off the final bits of fat, which is really the bit we need to be careful about. And it's probably the bit that's a little different to what you've done before with previous diets, where you can be a bit more assertive because there's kind of plenty on the physique, but the less body fat you have, the slower you want to try and lose it, because we don't want to sacrifice any of your hard-earned muscle. So that gives you some sort of idea. It would probably be around 20 weeks, I would say.
So you're saying 20 to 30 weeks of the actual prep, and then it sounds like there's at least 6 months to recover from it. So we're looking at a whole year to dedicate to us competitive season.
I think ideally that is a great way to frame it. So I would say, yeah, 20 to 30 weeks, and then say a 10 to 15 week recovery afterwards to get basically almost fully recovered. And then like some of the lagging things can take time. It differs a little bit person to person. But yeah, on the top end, it's probably like if you're including the recovery phase, we're looking at 45 weeks at the top end, but as little as 30, and it could be less depending on the category and everything like that. But I don't know if that's something I would ask. Are we looking at open bodybuilding, classic, or men's physique, or is that something you also want some guidance with?
So I don't really know what the classes mean. So can you explain to me what classes and divisions are? Because I've seen these names on these posts that I was looking at on Instagram. I've not really have any idea what that means.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. So most federations will have those three. So it will be open men's bodybuilding, which is, you can think of your kind of Ronnie Coleman, you can think of your Arnold Schwarzenegger, like the biggest, most muscular, most conditioned, and that's kind of what you're going for in open. Classic is very, very similar to open. Again, Chris Bumstead you'll probably be aware of, and many will know. I shouldn't speak like that. You know who Chris Bumstead is, don't you, Naruto? So classic is very similar to open, especially for natural bodybuilders. Big reason classic was introduced in the enhanced side was to make like a slightly healthier route where people didn't need to get as large. For classic and natural bodybuilding, there's no such thing as being too large or too conditioned for it. Most federations want you just as big, just as conditioned, and the biggest differentiating factor in that class is posing. And then if you have the classic lines and shape and symmetry, so the judges will preferentially kind of score people higher if they're a better flow, better posing, a better X frame and symmetry to their physique, a bit more aesthetic in that sense. And then men's physique is the ones with board shorts on, so you're not judged really too much on like lower body stuff. There's the judges will still look at calves. They'll want your quads to be like, or thighs pressing against the board shorts, but it's more you want a really good V taper, really good thick abs, arms, delts, that sort of thing. And then each category has slightly different posing. Um, so that would be taken into consideration too. And posing is a big thing that I think for a first time competitor, many aren't aware of how much time they'd need to put towards posing. I would say here you don't have to get a posing coach, but I do think if you knew of one local to you, it would be beneficial just to get at least one session with them just to get some of the fundamental basics. But it's somewhat similar to, I don't know if Naruto you ever had a PT or if you just learned kind of technique off videos online. It's just slower doing it off videos online. Having a PT in person to teach you some of the basics, like hip hinging, squatting, pressing, can just make it a bit smoother and faster, but not required. Just requires a lot of homework and time dedicated towards those. So I think that answered your question.
Yes, it does, and it actually brings up another one. So you mentioned posing. So what actually happens on show day? Like besides the pictures that I saw, I understand that there are poses that you have to go through, but like how does the competition work?
Yeah, so most federations now, it depends on the federation. In the kind of, if you've ever watched the Olympia or anything like that, they have a pre-judging and then they have like a finals. They call it pre-judging, but that's where most of their judgments are made in terms of like stepping on stage and presenting your physique and going through the poses, and the judges will kind of rate you. And in the natural scene, the WNBF is the biggest federation generally, and most federations just tend to have a straight run through show. So you would, when your category is kind of called out on stage, you'd go on stage, go through your mandatory poses, and the judges would judge you. They'd be like first call outs, which mean you're probably in that top five. Second call outs, that'd be ranking the people that weren't in the top five. And then you'd go backstage. They'd give you a bit of time to kind of relax, not much. And then you'd be called on for a posing routine most of the time. So it kind of depends again on the federation and things, but most will have a 60-second posing routine to music, which isn't judged. It's more for photos, for the family, your family in the crowd, and for yourself to enjoy. It's more likely to be judged in classic bodybuilding because of posing being such a big part of it. But yeah, open and classic will have like a posing routine to music, whereas for men's physique, you'd go and do like a walk. So you just come out, and essentially it is like a posing routine, but you're a bit more. It's a bit more strict in terms of the poses you'd have to hit. But you can think of it very similarly. You'd come out, do a walk, almost like on a fashion show runway. Come out, turn around, go back out, wave to the crowd, that sort of thing. But that's kind of how it would look on a show day. Yeah.
That makes sense. And can you tell me a bit more about what the nutritional approach can look like throughout it sounds like there are different phases of this contest prep, where you've mentioned diet breaks, you've mentioned refeeds. So from the start, when you start dieting for the first show, and then in the final weeks and like the last week leading up to the show, and then on show day, do you always eat the same things? Like, how does it work and why?
Yeah, so the diet fundamentally will look pretty much like the fundamental principles of the diet will look the same the whole way through. So it is just you have your macros, you have your calories, and you want to hit a certain number to make sure that you're in a certain level of calorie deficit for the week. So we're losing at the rate of loss that we want to be losing at. Uh, when you have more calories, as you probably know, Naruto, you are more willing to spend it on discretionary things, and you have a larger percentage to put towards it. So, following a flexible dieting approach, kind of thinking 80% of the diet wholesome, minimally processed foods, 20% what have you. So, if you're on, I don't know, starting on 2,500, 20%, 500 calories, that goes a lot further than in the depths of prep when you're probably on fewer calories. Then you might be on 20%. And that's, again, much smaller. If you're on 2000, say, you've only got 200 calories there to put towards things. And at that point, because hunger increases, diet fatigue increases, you might even decide it's not worth having, I don't know, a couple of biscuits. I just want to have more, whatever it is, oats or plants, or fruit and veg, that sort of thing, to keep you satiated. That fundamental principle will hold. So basically, it gets more restrictive the closer we get to stage. There isn't necessarily a time where you have to stop eating out or having takeaways or any of those aspects. And I certainly would encourage them to continue for as long as we can while still seeing results. And that it differs a little bit person to person. Some people struggle with hunger and accurately assessing their nutrition versus others. The only time I will be strict with things is the weeks leading into the show. That's where making the diet pretty boring will help with satiety, but also following more of a meal plan, similar things day in, day out, will remove an element of like diet fatigue, about thinking about what can I fit in, what can't I. And then also you get that consistency with the diet so that we aren't playing with variables that could influence the scale or the look. So we have a bit more control. By doing so, we also keep sodium, which will become more important, these electrolytes, which you probably heard about people manipulating for peak week. Once we keep the diet in a vacuum, we kind of have a baseline level of sodium. We might manipulate it to suggest having a bit more salt on your food, or having some higher sodium foods, or even incorporating some higher potassium foods to try and see if we can get a better balance to create a better look for you. And we'd start tracking your fluids probably a couple of weeks out from the first show, just to know where they're at. And if anything, normally it's encouraged more, but normally a lot of people are having an amount of sodium and kind of fluids that suits them really well. So I tend to just get a good baseline, and then we'd use that baseline to make sure that we at least have that, if not more. So in a peak week, the way I tend to approach peak weeks is keep most things in a vacuum and
Sorry,
just minute.
what's
Oh,
peak week?
peak week. So yeah, good question. So peak week is, for most individuals, it's the week leading into the show. So it is, if you're competing on a Sunday, you start your Sunday prior in peak week, and it's really just a week where we are reducing stress. So we do something like a deload with training if you've done those before, and we would be reducing if we have high levels of cardio or steps that's potentially causing inflammation in the legs. Would reduce that progressively through the week. And for the most part, I get my clients to maintain their protein and fat intake and just manipulate carbohydrates so that we know if we push them up, which generally we are, the change in the look is due to carbohydrates, not due to anything else. Along with carbohydrates, I will tend to kind of increase fluid and sodium as well, just because to store carbohydrates is glycogen within the muscles. We need fluids, we need the sodium to be there. And there's a variety of approaches we might take, and it will depend on how you're looking, timeline, what we see you respond well to. You mentioned refeeds before. That's something where we'll take a day to maintenance, basically, is what it will look like, a day or days during the week. And that'll be incorporated into our kind of calorie deficit for the week too. So if we need to slow down the rate of loss, incorporating a refeed might be one approach that we take. And we'd use those refeeds as a bit of data to collect to see how do you respond. So we get photos of you or videos on the day of refeeding, so after all your low days, and then like a day after, days after, to see where do you look your best. And that might allow us to be like, right, you look your best a day after one refeed. Hey, maybe we can take that approach during our peak week to keep things really simple. And obviously we'd assess the physique regularly at that point. So hopefully that answers the question to some extent. There's a lot of details that go into it that we'll explore during the contest preparation itself.
Yes, it does. I think it gives me some insights. Obviously, you can't really cover absolutely everything because it depends on the individual and the coach's approach as well. So I'm happy with that answer. And I have another question, which is about training. So you said that the basic principles of the diet don't change, and you went into a little bit of detail on what the minutiae, how the minutiae may change. I'm wondering with resistance training, how does the program change if it does throughout the contest preparation?
Great question. And probably similar to how you've approached your training during diet phases already, in that the way I always frame training for fat loss is what grew the muscle will maintain the muscle. So the training you've been doing to grow muscle, that provides the best stimulus for muscle growth, is the same answer to what will maintain muscle best during your training, during your contest preparation. And with no reason to believe that you won't continue to grow a bit of muscle in the start of the contest prep itself, when you still have decent decent fat stores, and you're not carrying lots of diet fatigue. I'd expect training to still go really well. That's certainly not something some people go into diets and they expect training just to kind of crumble and go terribly. Not at all. I'd expect the first half of prep maintenance of good training performance. The second half, it might be more holding, to the point of which we might see some performance drops. And I would say they're expected, because I wouldn't expect you to be able to hold your off-season performance when you're bigger, well-fed, and all of that during the depths of prep. If you are, your technique's changed, or you weren't training hard enough during your off-season. But your Wilks, so in powerlifting, they often use these Wilk scores, which is basically a score that's based off your body weight to strength ratio. So your body weight to strength ratio may even increase for a period of time, and hopefully won't drop off too far. And that will mean that we're hopefully maintaining as much muscle as possible. The biggest difference is the principles remain. We still work within our recoverable volumes, just you're going to be able to recover from less as you get leaner, and you are on less food. So average volume will probably come down in terms of set volume. And then stimulus to fatigue ratio of exercises still holds. So picking exercises that give you a really good kind of sense of pump, disruption, and feel great on your joint and connective tissue, that still holds, but it might change a little bit as your leverages change, as you have less fat between your joints. You might find yourself moving more towards stable exercises like rather than doing a dumbbell press, it might be that we move towards a machine press. But that'll be auto-regulated based off how you're doing, how you're feeling, and not presumed during the contest preparation itself. So no high reps to kind of etch in the striations or anything like that. The broader principles still apply. It's just as you become a leaner and smaller individual, some things will feel a bit better or worse, and you won't be able to recover from as much.
And what's your approach to cardio and steps?
Great question again. So for steps, I'll ask you kind of to record a baseline, or if you already know how many steps you're doing, then I'll get that number. But it might be if you don't know, Naruto would get that first week and average it out. And typically, if it's 7,000 or more, I'm just like, hey, let's hold that number. That's great. You're getting that day today. If it's less than 7,000, I do like to bump it up just because we have reason to believe if you're below that, you might not be getting the best health outcomes. And also, it's just a bit too sedentary for my liking. And I think it's an easy, low hanging fruit to help with energy expenditure to get it up. I don't like to add steps beyond an amount that the person finds very reasonable in their life. When people get up to 15,000 plus, it starts to become you have to be on your feet a heck of a lot to be able to reach that number of steps. So I don't want it to become a burden that becomes a stress that's too much. So I do have a bit of an upper limit there. Similarly with cardio, so steps and cardio is like as little as we can get away with. So cardio is very much a case of if someone likes doing cardio, if you really like doing it, Naruto, or you're already doing some, we might keep that there. But otherwise, I'd save it as like something in my back pocket to utilize later. Typically, the cardio that I would utilize would be closer to like low intensity, steady state, so a fast paced walk or something along those lines, versus anything like high intensity interval training or anything like that with sprints and things like in that nature, just because the risk to reward is not there of like high intensity interval training. It tends to beat up the joints, connective tissue, and risks injury, and can take away from the resistance training itself, which we really have to protect because that's the kind of the ignition, or that's what's maintaining our muscle mass during contest preparation. So yeah, with steps, get a baseline, try and hold those, maybe build them up a little bit, but within reason, not to become a burden. And then cardio is kind of a bit of a last resort. See if we can get away with as little as to none, and just play around with food and steps. But if we do need to incorporate it, more likely to be lower intensity, steady state type of cardio, which we would just build into your lifestyle to when suits you.
That makes sense. Now, I'm thinking this sounds pretty intense, especially when you're getting closer and closer to stage. I'm wondering what kind of advice you have around relationships with friends, family, people that you live with, but also people that you work with, and people that you hang out with.
Yeah, so you're completely right. It is intense, and I this is something I would ask you, Naruto. Are you can this contest preparation be in one of your top three priorities in life? I don't expect it to be number one, but can it be one of the top three priorities? Do you have a nice stress-free kind of year ahead of you where it can be a big priority, or have you got lots of other stresses incoming?
So, what do you mean? Because nobody is ever going to have a stress-free life. So, can you define what's a good level of stress to think about contest prep?
Yeah, so you're not bringing a child into the world. You're not doing exams. You don't have, I'm not sure, a moving house or anything along those lines. You don't have a wedding or anything like that, like your own wedding. Of course, it would be brilliant to have a completely stress-free life and just live under a rock. But for contest prep and to bring your best physique, obviously you have your job and everything. But if you have any kind of major life events going on, not the year to do it. But if life is just typical life and you can prioritize bodybuilding quite heavily, then I think you're good and well set.
Yeah, in that case, I think I'm all set for this year.
Cool. So yeah, in terms of relationships, something I do like to always remind any client of mine, and also for myself as I'm going through my own contest prep, is it's our choice. We're deciding to do it. It's a selfish endeavor that we're not. No one else is making us do it. No one else. So we shouldn't try and put those stresses upon others and try and kind of internalize it. So it is inevitable. that at times, as you have experienced in your own diet phases you've done previously, that you become apathetic, you become irritable, you have less energy for day-to-day tasks. But it's important not to take that out on others or let contest prep take too much away from life in general. There will be times, social obligations and things like this, you might have to abstain from for short periods of time, but for as much as possible, we try and incorporate all of that. And it is a gradual thing. It's not like we've said from 30, 20 weeks out, life is bodybuilding and nothing else. It's a gradual, maybe it's a month or so out where it's like, hey, maybe I can't go and stay out all night and party with my friends. It's just not worth it at this point if I'm serious about bringing my best to stage. And then at times of which you do find yourself getting irritable or anything like that, it's to try and always just take a breath, don't react, and that can really help in the moment. And then also just letting, especially if you have a partner or people close to you, letting them know what you're doing, telling them that you don't want it to have a negative impact on them, and you'd appreciate their support in it. But if they do notice that you're acting a certain way and behaving and they don't like it, call you out on it. And then in those moments, I always just say my girlfriend's always right when I'm prepping. Like, if we ever have something we're disagreeing, I'll disagree for a moment, and I'll be like, "No, you're right," because I'm. If you've ever seen the Snickers advert, Naruto, it's you're not yourself when you're hungry, and that couldn't be more true as you're getting into the depths of prep. So it's just reminding yourself throughout that it's your decision, no one else's. So don't take it out on others, and try and internalize that, and try not to let bodybuilding take away from the rest of your life. And hopefully it continues to be a productive part of it. And there's kind of, just as an example, you might not have the energy to be I don't know, intimate or go out for a meal. So those sort of things can be not replaced, but they might be things like, hey, I can go out and I can buy some flowers for my partner and they can feel better for that, or a present that I doesn't require like energy and effort in some ways, but it still shows that I care. And similarly, you might not be able to go out for that kind of lovely meal out or what have you, but maybe you can cook together at home and do those sort of things. And yeah, it's very character building to be able to go through all of that whilst maintaining relationships, your job to a high level. But because it's gradual and we'll be taking a intelligent evidence-based approach towards it, where we're kind of moderating the rate of loss, we're taking refeeds. It's only a very short period of time. We would hope that you experience the real severe senses of not being your best.
On that note, can we talk a little bit more about the recovery phase, as you called it, afterwards? So, what is the aim of it, and what would it look like on a day-to-day basis and over the course of those 6 months that you've talked about it might take to return to a state that's recovered from the prep?
For sure. So it's something you actually mentioned it previously, your lower intervention point of which you think you got below. And that's where we'll be going as well during a contest prep. We're getting to extreme levels of body fat. And so that's not sustainable. And so we do need to recover from that. And in short, it's about recovering to that lower intervention point, and trying not to overshoot it too much, which a lot of people struggle with. And doing it, there is an amount of time we also need. So it's not just a case of once you've got that body fat back on, you're 100% recovered, because it's taken time to get there too. So we're just slowly, everything that we slowly did on the way down, we're basically reversing that on the way up. Um, in some senses, not in every sense, because initially we will actually put you in a calorie surplus to regain body fat, and a fairly decent calorie surplus. And then we might try and slow that rate of gain as we get closer and closer to that lower intervention point over the course of a couple of months, typical for a lot of people. And during that time, it's tough, physically tough, because you're obviously beat up from prep and you're recovering from that, but psychologically tough too, because you don't have shows anymore. So a lot of people, I use the analogy of being like a dog on a leash. Like, they're on this tighter and tighter leash as they get to stage, and they're like chomping at the bit, and then they just get let go. And suddenly post show, they're eating everything in sight, they're running wild, and it's a complete disaster and mess. So rather than being just a dog on a leash and being let off, it's we just let that leash out a little bit, a little bit longer, a little bit longer. So in regards to like the diet, you might be on a lot more food, but you probably initially just want to eat more of your same diet foods. Maybe incorporate a little bit of flexibility because you've got a larger budget, but not too much because the body's in a ready state to just pound on body fat ASAP. It wants to get healthy quickly, and it's okay about getting over fat during this period of time too. But we don't want to do that. It's not good for our health, but also it's not good for your long term career as a bodybuilder if you get over fat during this phase because the leaner we can be whilst being healthy, the longer we can then gain for because we know we have to get shredded at some point. And so we want to have a nice lean kind of improvement season starting point that buys us a lot of runway to keep gaining for an extended period of time. So yeah, in short, we're trying to get to your lower intervention point again of body fat where you feel good, healthy, the body is happy, and you can progress from here. That's going to take between around 2 months to be able to get there. And it's challenging psychologically, physiologically, and you just have to know there's a time component to it, and you can't just kind of eat all food in sight. Having someone, and it's great that you're looking for coaching during this time because that accountability piece is really high. And this is where you can talk to kind of people in your circle who, I don't know, it depends on people's social lives. There's some people like, oh, you finished prep, now we're eating out. Or your partner is like, oh, now we can have a takeaway every night. And like, they just want to indulge you because you haven't had it. But telling them that, hey, over the next couple of months, I still need to be pretty tight. You can almost imagine it's a bit like comp prep still. It's just an extension of that. And then once you're in a healthy state where your hunger and appetite is regulated a bit more, you'll be in a position where you can have that typical off-season flexibility again.
That makes sense. So we're talking about coaching for basically a year if I want to stay on for the entire recovery phase. And then I would assume that entering the competitions costs money. So I'm wondering, what are we looking at in terms of the financial costs of competing?
Yeah, there's it's expensive, but we don't do it too often, which is useful in that regard. So yeah, entering shows, there'll be a fee involved with that. Typically, you'll also have to get a membership as well with that federation, which lasts a year, but basically you have to get it every time you compete. So you'll have to get that. A tan. So I will advise getting a professional tan just because uh, it takes that stress out of your hands, and they do a great job of it. They're there on the show day as well, so that's helpful. And then you'll need to buy posing attire. So these will be the most expensive kind of a pair of underwear you'll ever have to buy. So yeah, the posing attire is there too, and then obviously travel. Depending on where the show is, typically you'll have to stay at least one night, so there'll be some accommodation as well. So it's certainly not cheap to do the shows themselves. I think that. Oh, and then the only other thing I can think of is photos. So if there's a professional photographer, which there often is, it's not a bad idea to invest in getting those photos because unless you have people in the crowd that can get a great shot.
So it sounds like it's at least several thousand pounds spread across the year because we're already looking at like if a contest prep coach is around 250 per month and that's 12 months, that's already almost £3,000. And then we're adding several hundred on top, including all of these aspects.
Yes, yeah, it's unfortunate that it costs so much, but I think it's like any sport. Like I always look at, I don't know, people who play golf or people who like ride bikes and they do this regularly. The cost of some of this, like some of these clubs and everything like that. So yeah, it's I try and look at it as if it's an investment. And the good news is, Naruto, I think you're in the fitness industry, so you probably can expense quite a lot of it.
Oh yeah, I think so. And in the end, passions and hobbies cost money. It's just
Yeah.
that many people talk about these aspects. And I think the final question I have for this consultation, Steve, is what kind of mindset would you advise that a beginner like me goes into a contest prep with? Like, for example, it's a competition. So, what if I told you that I wanted to win? Like, what would you advise me to think about? And yeah, just what kind of mindset would you think would be best to adopt so that I can make the most of it?
Yeah, I think it's important to have realistic expectations. So a coach can help with that because they can look at your starting photos and they can get an awareness of well, how much muscle does this person have? What is their symmetry like? What is their muscularity like? And if they've dieted down before, do I think they have the potential to get into the condition that's required for stage? Because there are juniors, teens with very high. Well, there was literally at the WNBF um, over the past weekend that I judged at. The junior bodybuilder got a pro card, so you can do really really well when you're young, but you probably know if you're kind of have that genetic proclivity to like, hey, I'm much bigger than my peers and I have a lot more muscle. Most people are nearer to average, which is why it's average. And then it's a case of, right, most people for their first comp prep, they're looking at the likes of a Chris Bumstead, or they're looking at the top bodybuilders in the space and the pros, and they're like, oh, I want to look like that. But if you apply this to any other field, you just realize that's a silly expectation to have upon yourself. You don't expect yourself to be a Michael Jordan of basketball. If you go and play a game, you expect yourself to be like not great. But with good coaching and like wise management over a period of time, you can be the best version of yourself. And so I think that's the kind of mindset to go into a contest prep is like, right, I just want to execute the process to the best of my ability, do what my coach requires of me, give my best, and then I can be satisfied with any result I get. I reflect upon. We spoke about it my off season. My last season. I was actually going to do a post, which is basically just showing my physique throughout like my different shows and being like, in this show I won, in this show I came last, in this one I came second last. But if you look at the physiques, you wouldn't say they look dramatically worse or better. They look pretty much the same because it was over a short period of time. And that's because you can't control who turns up on the day. You can't control what the judges deem to be most fitting of the criteria. And so there's no point focusing too much on the outcome. I think being driven and competitive is great. And you definitely want to go out there as if you want to win. And it's important to have that mindset. Uh, but being realistic and understanding, hey, it's my first season. I should just focus on enjoying it and doing my best. And I do encourage first time competitors, not that you can't be competitive, but to focus more on the enjoyment than anything else and getting that experience because it should be a long term career that we're looking at. Or just a sense of discovery for that first contest prep. You want to know if you like it or not. And so I always encourage, and I want to try and get people to like it because that's why they're doing it in the first place. They think they will like it. So I encourage to take a route to that path. So not to destroy my first time competitors uh, because simply it's not worth the cost on the other side. They might run into issues and we want to kind of give them a long term career within the space of bodybuilding. So those are some of the things I'd get them to focus on during their period of time.
You've mentioned issues. What kind of issues can you run into?
Yeah, so people get burnt from any extreme sport because it's extreme for a reason. And with contest preparation, the most extreme is to do with the diet side. You know, the training is the training; it doesn't change. But the diet is tough, and it can lead people down into a hole where they do become very reclusive. They break up with partners because you become a worse version of yourself. You might lose jobs. You again get disordered eating behaviors if you aren't managing it well, or if you have poor coaching where they put you in extreme calorie deficits. They don't give you good timelines with refeeds and diet breaks. They give you a strict meal plan, and then all of that in and amongst with not then coaching post show or knowledge of what to expect post show, where again it's suddenly you've finished. Many people will be aware of in the Olympics, they train for 4 years for this one event, and then afterwards they get this blues of just like, wow, I've just dedicated 4 years of my life to this, and now nothing. And similar, you've potentially had months and months and months of dieting down, and then your season ends. And it's like, oh, now I have no reason I can't eat the world, and food tastes so good, and I can stomach 10,000 calories. Let's do a challenge. But then quickly the next day, your kind of the water retention, your look changes really quickly. You have poor health, you feel terrible, your digestion's off, you can't train like you would like to, and you might get way overshoot your body fat. And suddenly you're like, wow, like physically, I hate how I look. I feel terrible. I want to diet, but I can't diet. And suddenly you just lose love of bodybuilding because it has become really extreme and you haven't controlled some of those variables. So normally it is relationships and relationship with food that becomes very disordered. And they kind of blame bodybuilding, but it's more of the approach to it that is the issue, or the coaching through it, unfortunately.
Thank you, Steve. You've given me a lot to think about. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you think I should have, or is there anything that you want to say before we wrap up this consultation?
Yes. So the biggest question, and I often open with this, is your why. So I'd love to know if you've thought about what your reason is for wanting to step on stage. You mentioned seeing people on like Instagram and things like this, but uh, that probably isn't a strong enough why. So I would love to know what your reason is for wanting to do this.
Can you give me some examples of some whys that you think would be strong enough?
I will say, so my personal why, at least when I initially competed, was to prove to myself that I'd recovered from some ill health, basically, where I'd had an accident and I had recovered on paper, but I wanted to be like, right, if I can do this extreme sport, take it to a level of, again, like very low levels of body fat and recover out the other end and still be in a good place. I know like I'm free of this ill health I once exhibited. It's moved over time where my why is now I want to challenge myself to see if I can beat my previous best and reap the rewards, the character building and everything that comes with it, and also learn as a coach myself. Every time I go through preps, I learn and I can apply that to clients. And then a lot of my clients, their reason is they've been training for a long time, they've built this physique, and they kind of want to kind of have something to show for it, and they want a competitive outlet. And they've seen others, whether that vlogs and journeys over on Instagram, and they've heard a lot about it, but they want to go through it themselves. And that self discovery. So for a lot of people, it's that.
That makes sense. I think for me, the reason I would want to do it is that when I had an eating disorder, I took my training and my diet to an extreme to where it became all consuming. And I have a tendency to do that even now because I care so much about it. I also realize though that that all consuming extreme it doesn't make me enjoy the rest of my life, and also it doesn't make me enjoy the endeavor itself that I'm devoting so much energy to, and it ultimately leads to ill mental and physical health as well. So I think for me the reason would be that if I can go through a contest prep and get that lean, that unsustainably lean, um, and essentially if I can take physique development to that extreme and not make it into an all consuming experience, then that would be proof for me that I have at last overcome the eating disorder behaviors, thoughts, and mindset that plagued me for so long. And it would be for me the mark that yes, I have moved beyond this. I can live my life without that dictating it anymore.
I like that. Yeah, it's that old. Sometimes you have to do extreme things to prove to yourself that you're free of something that was quite extreme. And that experience and being through it is enough then to kind of propel you forward in the rest of your life. And that sounds like a strong why. And the reason I think it's important to have a strong why is because there will be days, probably multiple days, where you will question yourself. You'll question, why am I doing this? I look terrible, or whatever it is, because you have these negative thoughts, which you've probably experienced during photo shoots and things like this. And then you come to your why, and you're like, that's why. And that'll hold you through. But if it's just like, I want a trophy, or I want a cool Instagram shot, it's like, you can go buy a plastic trophy, you can go edit a photo and get a great Instagram shot. There has to be a deeper meaning behind it. So it sounds like you have that, which is great.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve Sensei. I love this consultation. Now I'm going to call it the end of our role play. It's also the end of our episode today. Steve, I had a lot of fun and I thought that this will be really valuable for my listeners. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I screwed up my role play a few times and you had to go into interviewer mode, but hopefully the information's still out there. So I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, I mean, you'll come back on the podcast because you're already a returning guest. So I will have more opportunities to coach you through how to role play. worry.
I was never good at drama. It was it may have been my least favorite subject. I was just like, I can't do this.
Well, then, when I asked you to do it and you said, "Yeah, let's do it," I have to say I am impressed that you chose to do despite not liking drama. I appreciate it.
Exposure therapy, though, you got to do it. You got to take yourself out of your comfort zone.
True. And before we wrap up, if people want to reach you and engage with your content or sign up for coaching, where can they find you? And I'll put the links in the show notes as usual.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on again, Nikias. I always enjoy chatting to you. And if people want to find me, I'm Revive Stronger on Instagram. It's where I'm most present and produce most content. Otherwise, you can find the coaching, the podcast at revivestronger.com, or you can search on podcast providers, the Revive Stronger podcast or the Improvement Season podcast, two separate podcasts when you're listening on like a Spotify or an Apple. If you're on YouTube, though, they're all under just Revive Stronger's YouTube channel. So hopefully that wasn't too much of a mess. And Nikias will have all the links in the description for you guys.
Don't you worry, everything will be in the show notes, neat and tidy for everybody to click on all the links. And at last, thank you, Steve, again for coming on. Thank you, dear listeners, for giving me and Steve some of your time today. And I will talk to you next time. Lastly, if you want to support the podcast and help me reach more people, please leave a 5-star rating or review on any podcast platform that you're using. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.